I saw when you called me in the morning, I was in the middle of a Pilates class, though.
Oh.
Yeah. And then as soon as I got home, I called, but then I looked at my calendar.
But hey, we booked 3 hours because you're like our most senior
My life is long.
guest.
Therefore,
So I thought there's so many decades that we need to cover. Like we better
Well-
book in 3 hours for a legend like you.
yeah, right.
And we don't even know what to start. But I find, although I've known you for what, 25 years? Yeah, right?
25 minutes.
No, I've known you for 25 years.
Yes, I can tell you exactly.
But then again, I don't know a lot of things that happened before that, although.
No, what year were they in post-production? It was the end of
Independence
one.
Day?
What?
Independence Day?
Yes. It was the end of the first Independence. They were doing it. Uli came on.
96, yeah.
96.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where I met him. That's where I met Roland the first time, on the set.
Through Uli, right?
Yeah, Uli made me come.
We have Uli
I
this
was-
afternoon.
Yeah, no, I know. He's at 5.
Shout out to Uli Steiger.
Yes.
But today, it's all about Ross Heller.
Right.
Rosilyn
Yeah.
Heller.
Like, I need to remember all this.
So
Well, yeah,
I
that's
remember
the-
one thing where you just mentioned that you had an interview like this for the Women in Film.
Yes.
And there's always been like this big thing, like this was the first woman executive in the film industry in the 70s. And it was always like Sherry Lansing, right? That they would always say it was her.
No.
Or who was it that they
Marsha-
falsely said that?
Marsha Nassar set herself up. She's somebody I knew in New York. She was at Dell Publishing when I was at Signet. We had
Signet
very
is a
similar-
publishing company?
Yes. Well, Signet was New American Library. It was the overall company.
Okay.
Signet was the imprint of it. It was funny because she was in paperbacks and so was I. Signet was paperback.
What were you doing there?
I was an editor. I started.
So what do? You get submitted like literary work
Yeah,
and you
read.
evaluate if
Right,
it's good or not
Right.
for being published?
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so was she, and then she moved to
But she
Hollywood?
was yes. I don't know who moved first. She or I. More or less it was at the same time. And by the way, is this being recorded?
Yeah.
Oh well.
That's what we're here
won't te-
for.
Oh yeah. Well then I'll skip that story.
No. You could talk about anything.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to talk about anybody else. So I
No, but I remember that there was always, when I first met you, and people said, oh, Ross Heller, she was the first female executive in the film
First
industry at a
vice president.
studio,
Vice
vice president,
president,
at Columbia Pictures, right?
Right.
So, but then there was falsely somebody else was claiming that title. Was there a rivalry back in the
not-
day, or what was it?
I wasn't paying any attention to it.
Right.
No, it was not a rivalry. It's just that she was more aggressive and co-optive and whatever, and that's fine. I never really cared. I mean, it bothered me somewhat because it was a lie, and she knew
Right.
it. She knew. As a matter of fact, I had been offered the job that she actually took eventually,
Okay.
and I was already at Columbia. And I don't know if I was already a VP, but that was the year that I became a VP.
What year was that?
1973.
Okay.
I started there in 71, this was 73.
But let's go back to the publishing. How did you get into publishing?
Well, publishing was not too surprising because I read a lot. And I
And you
was a
still
lit
do.
major.
I see half of your bed is always stacked with newspapers.
Well, newspapers, books, whatever. Anyway, but I sort of knew I was always going to be in publishing. I was living, I'm from New York, and then, and this was kind of my path, and
your passion too?
my passion.
Did you study literature when you went to?
Yes, yeah, I was a lit major. I
were?
have an MA. Yeah, and I was always more international than just English major. Everybody else was English majors. I was always a comparative lit major.
What does that mean?
It means comparing different literatures. I mean,
Different
it's
cultures too,
yeah,
and,
right,
and
exactly.
languages.
Exactly, and but then I was lured into the movie business.
But how long were you? How long were you in the publishing?
in the
New
publishing
York?
world? Well, when I came back from Europe. I already had an.
Wait a second. What were you doing in Europe?
I
Living there?
was living there. I lived in Italy for a year.
1 year.
Yes, and I would have stayed forever if I could have, but it was a matter of really deciding at that point.
What was the purpose of that move?
Just getting away. Oh, the
Life.
fact is, no, I had just gotten an MA. I had to stay an extra year. Everybody else, like the English department, they only had to do 2 years. I had to do 3 years because nobody told me I had to do a thesis. So I had to stay an extra year and do a thesis, and I did. But I was never in the English department. I was always in Comp Lit. And what happened by the end of the year, after I finished my thesis, I got a note from one of my previous roommates who had moved to Italy that she had this great place in Rome, and her roommate was just left, had just moved out, and she said, "Come, I have rooms. I've got this huge apartment. It's really fabulous. You've got to come." So I went. Literally, I went back to New York, dropped off my stuff from California, and got on a boat. I took a boat to Italy.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait, you were in California at that
I was
point
in.
already?
No, well, I got my MA at Berkeley.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, I mean, just to review, I got a BA in Wisconsin.
Right.
Don't ask me what I was doing there. But anyway, I ended up in Wisconsin and then an MA from Berkeley. So I left Berkeley, went to New York, dropped off my stuff, and took off for Italy.
Where did the boat land in Italy?
In Naples.
Uh-huh.
And then I don't know how I got up, but I got up to, and I had the address. I already had the script. I walked into this apartment. It was 5 flights up.
What year was that?
It was 62, 61, 62.
See, I wasn't
61.
even born.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. How generous of you. No, nobody was born.
But I'm intrigued by that time because it was such a.
Oh, it was
everything
fabulous.
was so different.
Well, it was very different. And when I came back, then all the politics started. There was nothing. The surprising thing was, because I've always been very political.
Yes.
I went to Wisconsin. There's more politics going on in Wisconsin than when I went to Berkeley.
Shockingly.
Yes, shockingly. Because Berkeley didn't really wake up to anything until about 64, 65.
Were they too caught up in the summer of love?
Whatever, summer, winter, drugs, whatever it was. I mean, it was just not political in the way that Wisconsin was. And but eventually, then it was mid-60s, and young men were getting, not only drafted, but, murdered, killed. So, and essentially, I never really figured out why people it's so mysterious how different the 60s were from now. And I said, well, because everybody's life is on the line. These young men's life is on. There hasn't been anything like that since.
Exactly.
That's the big difference. That gets your attention right away.
Right.
That's why everything became so political, because kids' lives were on.
Although there's a lot of people's life on the line, but not so more in the background, because if you see people are filing bankruptcy because they can't pay their medical bills and so forth, and homelessness and all of that,
Oh, well, it's
in a different form,
Right.
It's not war.
Right. Well, but the thing is, we're talking about kids. We're talking about young people.
Yeah, they get drafted by 17, right?
Yes, exactly, 18, whatever it is, whatever. But so that was a very, different time.
So had that something to do with you that made it easier for you to go, I'm going to Italy?
When do you go? Oh, yes.
I'm out of here.
No. This was before. This was even before there was really a Vietnam War.
Yeah.
It really started in 61, 62.
So were you an activist, like an anti-war activist?
Well, yes. Yeah, of course. But when I was, the first couple of years that I was at Berkeley, there was nothing going on politically. It was all, which was fine with me because I was part of a very active group, not so much with politics, but enjoying life. This was San Francisco. It was fabulous, even though I was in Berkeley. I had a little house with a roommate in Berkeley, and I had a great time. I always loved school. I mean, I loved being there.
But because you studied what you love.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it doesn't feel like I'm studying, because it's like you fulfilling your passion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
And what better place than Berkeley. I mean, I was from Brooklyn. I mean, Wisconsin was already whoa.
Yeah.
But then, you know.
And were your parents like supportive that to get the go the
I don't know
academic
about
way?
support. No. They never gave me a hard time because I was like a dynamo. I was out there.
You were
I was
just doing
out of
it.
I was just doing it.
And your sister too, right?
Yeah, my sister was 4 years older, but she had a much more conventional path, including she was married by the time she graduated from Brooklyn College, or the year after she graduated. So, and that was about the same time that I left and went to Berkeley. Actually, I'm just trying to think about.
It doesn't matter.
No. It was even in Wisconsin. She was already living in Chicago. That's right. She was in Chicago, and I was in Wisconsin.
But your parents were basically immigrants, right?
They were totally immigrants.
So they came.
They came. My mother came. Well, they left where they were living in Poland, a place called Kreva, which is a northeastern section of Poland, and my father also was never clear exactly where he was from, but more or less the same area. We're all.
But they
all
met
of us.
they met in New York? Or?
No, they met at Coney Island.
Oh.
And he really had his eye on my mother's younger sister, Esther, but they ended up together anyway. So, they were in their teens. I mean, I don't know how old my mother was. I guess I can figure it out by her birthday. But
And you think that's why they were like, they just let you guys do because it's kind of the American dream?
Well, we were still in the 30s. We came along. My sister came along, I guess, in 32, and me in 37. Or she was in 33, and I was in 37. But
like my mom.
Really? Yeah. Yeah. Same age. Anyway, so I mean, they, for them, they had no idea really. I mean, about what I just did, what I did. And of course, my sister was a big help. My sister went to Brooklyn College. She did all the conventional things. She went to Brooklyn College. She got married after college. She started having babies and teaching and whatever. When I left home, I would call maybe once a week or occasionally, but. So I spent 3.5 years at Wisconsin. Then I came back to New York. I remember having a job over the summer, and then I went out to Berkeley. And
graduated,
and that's when I heard from my ex-roommate that she had this fabulous part in Rome.
So what did you do in Italy? How did you think that you were going to stay for a year?
I didn't know how long I was going to stay.
Right.
But I knew I had a job there already. Not a job.
How so?
Well, because I was teaching. I was teaching English to Italian kids. That's what I was doing.
And did you study Italian before?
No,
in this
I knew no Italian.
Oh my gosh!
Actually,
how did you teach?
It's a very funny story, actually, because what happened was that I had a friend. Oh God, I can't remember his name, but he was a linguist, and he was at graduate school. This is in Berkeley, and he was the one who said, "Oh, you're going to go to Italy. I'm going to get you a book." And Italian is the easiest thing to learn because if you know the sounds, it's always the same. It doesn't vary. No, I mean, it's true.
What does our Italian producers say to that?
Well, no, I mean, if you read it, it's exactly as you read it. If you have a Bisogna, Bisogna, it's not bisogna, whatever it is, it's bisogna. And it's always bisogna. That's S-I-G-N. It's always zin. I mean, there's certain that you learn this. Okay, so I got off this boat. So this friend gives me this book, this little book that I'm studying it on the boat. And I arrived there. And the only thing I had learned was, aiutami. No.
Help me.
No. Yes. Aiutami. Sono ferita. Aiutami. Help me. I'm wounded. That's what I learned. I'm wounded. So, of course, what I was learning from was a U.S. Army manual. I was learning Italian.
That's hilarious.
It's hilarious. So that's what I learned. I got off the boat and I said, help me. I'm wounded.
But did you have any idea what you were saying?
No, I did. I didn't know what I was saying. But it was very funny. But that's basically what I learned, from the Army manual. That's how I learned Italian. So I did know a little bit.
So then you just taught the kids, but basically just speaking English?
Yes.
How old
Yeah.
were the kids you were taking?
Well, I had one family. There were 3 kids.
Okay.
A very rich family. Actually, the guy owned Il Messaggero, which is this huge newspaper, and he had these 3 kids, and I was teaching these, the three kids. And then I got other students and stuff. So I was basically just.
So you were making a living.
I was making a living.
And
I
you said
I didn't
pretty
need very
good
much.
here, good food, good lifestyle.
I was living on Campo dei Fiori to begin with, which is one of the great markets of all time in Italy, in Rome. So I was living on the 5th floor, just overlooking the Campo dei Fiori, and because I never learned Italian otherwise,
Yeah.
mi Italiano is very, very good, molto buono. Because I learned it there. I was speaking,
Right.
and you learn it because, and this is a market, so everybody's blah blah blahing,
Yeah.
blah blah blahing, and I learned within 3 months.
How I learned Spanish like that too on the street.
Yeah,
It's
on the
like the
street.
best school.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And very colloquial.
So, so you had a good time. Did you travel around Italy?
I did. I had a boyfriend.
Oh, Italiano.
Certamente. Napolitano. More than Italian. He was Neapolitan. Napolitano. And
What was his name?
Aldo. Aldo, ready for this? Scopa. Now, Scopa, I don't know whether you know, is a colloquialism. Do you know this? Scopare? Scopare.
Yes.
It's like, it means to brush, scopa,
Yeah.
but it also means to fuck.
Oh.
Basically. I mean, essentially.
Aldo Scopa, bingo.
Bingo is right. What's his name? Aldo Scopa. And when I wrote that script, by the way, I put Aldo Scopa's name on it, which anybody who
Oh, that was your alias, right?
that was my alias. Yes,
Yeah.
that was my alias.
That's
Aldo
hilarious.
Scopa. It was hilarious. Anyway,
So what happened with Aldo? Did you guys break up?
Well, we didn't break up. I left. I mean, I really had to make a choice at a certain point after a
Not
year.
enough Scopa going on, or
Well, that was all fine. Actually, he took me. He had a great little car. He had a Spider. Mille due.
Alpha Spider, yeah.
Yeah, Mille due. And we went to France. We traveled all. I mean,
so it was like a little Hemingway book, like you two with the top down in the car,
Actually, it's
having
true.
a cappuccino.
Right. And he knew a lot of people because he had been working, and even after I left, he was still working at the Excelsior Hotel in Rome, and he was one of the whatever.
Like concierge.
A concierge, yeah, but he was and he was sometimes behind the desk, sometimes not behind
Okay.
me. Anyway,
The jack of all trades.
Yeah, he was. Yes, he had a good job, and he had this great car, and he had me, and we were traveling all.
But you dumped him.
Well, I left.
Yeah.
I
Why?
left
Why did you leave?
because I knew that if I didn't leave, then
You will
I'd
have
never leave.
bambinis, and you will be a mama and cook pasta.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to marry him.
Yeah.
No,
You knew that.
I knew that.
Yeah, we know, right?
Yeah. He was fun and all that. That was fine, and he was a good friend. He
So
was
did
good
you have a
friend.
game
I
plan,
knew
like,
him.
and set up your return to the States? No. So do you,
I just decided, actually, curiously enough, we had just made a trip down to Naples. He had brought me back. I was in the apartment. My apartment was empty because we had, I don't know where my roommate was. But anyway, but we left. We lived fairly separate lives. We weren't
Right.
constantly together.
Just
We
sharing the
good
rent.
friends. Oh, we were sharing the rent. And we did live together. We were friends. And we had been roommates in Berkeley, too. And she had left because she was finished the year before me. Anyway, so it was...
so you went back.
Yeah, so
To
I
New
went
York,
back,
right?
I went back to New York, but I remember coming into my apartment, putting on the radio, and the first thing I hear, I have nothing else in the apartment because I packed already, I'm all ready to go. I turn on the radio, and I hear, Il morte come Lincoln. He died like Lincoln. I'm saying, what?
Who was he?
What? Who was he? It was John Kennedy. This is
Oh, my God.
1963. Literally, the night that I left was the night that he was murdered, or the day after. That's and then, because I didn't have television, I didn't have
Right.
anything there, anything like that, and I had to go back to Naples. Because I was taking a boat back.
Yeah.
Again. Anyway, so I don't even remember how I got there. Probably my boyfriend.
Oh, with the train
No,
or
no, he
something?
probably drove me because his family is in Naples anyway. But for some reason, the boat was leaving from Naples, so I had to be in Naples. And that was 1963, November, whatever that date is, 21st or 22nd. That the next day or the day after, I remember on the boat hearing that he was killed. I mean, hearing about, and then there were all these clips. I mean, people had, I don't know how we saw it, but I remember seeing it on the boat. People were showing me, what had happened.
They showed you on their Instagram. I'm kidding.
No, I don't even know how it, or maybe I never did see it. Maybe I only heard it.
That was
shot.
kind of a dark kind
It was a very dark period. And I came back to New York. And then my life really started over because I had been in school, between the MA and BA, I was in school for a lot. So,
then you were in your 20s. So, yeah.
I rented an apartment. And
where was your apartment? Where did you land?
23rd Street.
Oh, in Manhattan.
Okay. In Manhattan. Oh, yeah, only Manhattan.
And then you applied for a job in publishing.
Yeah, I was looking for a job in publishing, basically. And the job that I had before, I had a great job at Viking Press, which is a great...
Wait, but you just came back from Italy.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about in the summer.
Oh.
There were summers that I would come back. And mostly I would work during the summer, but for some reason... Oh, no. When I got expelled from high school. I never graduated, actually. I was a handful. I was a handful.
How did you were able to go to college?
Well, I already had scholarships at the University of Wisconsin. And I had one more semester to go. And they just threw me out. They said, never mind, don't worry, we'll graduate you. We don't need you here anymore. I was
So you were a troublemaker in high school? What's the trouble you were making?
No, the trouble I was making was probably mainly, I remember, disrespecting teachers, and all the kids in that school were basically gangsters. This was a very strange school for me to...
What part of Brooklyn?
I was I lived in Borough Park, and I was supposed to go very famously to New Utrecht High School, which is where my sister went and where everybody from the neighborhood. But it got overcrowded, so they started shipping us, busing us, without calling it busing, but it was busing us to this other neighborhood, which was very bad, basically. And it was, oh, God, I can't remember what it's called, but it's still there.
Right.
And I went to Manual Training High School, which everybody thought was a manual training school, but it wasn't. It was a regular high school. And so that was kind of a waste of time. I was there for three years, I think. I mean, 2 or 3 years at least. So I didn't actually graduate. I was supposed to graduate in June. They let me go a semester before because I had already gotten a scholarship. The woman, I had this grade advisor named Mrs. Tannenbaum. And
the Royal Tannenbaum?
One of the royal. For me, she was a Royal Tannenbaum because she was extraordinary. And I was studying dance. I used to go 3 days a week to New York for modern dance classes. So she said, "Oh, you've got to go to my alma mater. They have the best dance groups and theater and all this kind of thing. You'd be so happy there." So she got me a scholarship actually there. And then I had one more semester to finish, so they just released me. So I spent the time working, making some money. I remember working in...
So that's when you refer to the Viking jobs and stuff, was during...
Right, yes.
So let's circle back to the... you come back from Italy, you apply for a job, and that's when you got that publishing job?
Well, I didn't get the publishing job that I wanted because I didn't get into any of the major... For example, I had worked at Viking before, but it was I worked for somebody who was in marketing. And now... Anyway, I couldn't get it. It was not that easy. And I finally found a job, believe it or not, with doing religious textbooks for Holt Reinhardt.
Oh, my God.
But at least it paid well, and it was,
it was a job.
I had a job, and now I had an apartment.
And you were in, because isn't it like, don't you think it's like when you want to go into a field?
Right, exactly.
It's like, even if you start in the mailroom, that's like,
you
got to start somewhere.
Yes, exactly. So I was doing this for a while, and then eventually, I don't know how I got the job at New American Library, but I did. Something opened up. And again, I was supposed to be a copy editor. That's what I was hired at. But I always wanted to be an editor, not a copy editor.
The copy editor is just the ones who checks?
Corrects everything. Yes, exactly. So I ended up at Holt Reinhardt. I don't remember how long. It was a year or two, or a year and a half. I don't know. But then something came up at New American Library, and I got a job there. as a junior editor. I don't know what it was called. It was in the editorial department. I was not a copy editor anymore.
So you're moving closer to where you want to be.
Well, this was perfect for me.
Right.
And it was hardcover and softcover. But I was mainly doing softcover stuff.
What's the difference? Why do this? The hardcover is the ones that are just newly released, and then they become
No. Hardcover are more, well-known authors.
But at the time, it's different now, right? Because every
I don't know.
hardcover becomes a softcover eventually.
Well, eventually, yes, that was the
Yeah.
same thing then also. But there were also softcover originals. For example, I used to do teenage advice books.
Okay.
That was one of my fields. Which
Did
is
you learn
rare.
something from that?
Yeah, you know what I learned? I had this great friend. I had this author named Barbara. I can't remember her last name at the moment. I guess it was Waterston.
Yeah.
She was married to Sam.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's adorable. We were great friends. And then the women's movement started. And she went bananas.
What
We
year
became-
was that? Are we now in the mid-60s?
Mid-
65?
Yeah, 65. Yeah, I mean, this is already percolating, 65, 66. And by the way, okay, so I had an Italian boyfriend. This is very important. 'cause
In New York?
In New York.
Okay.
And he was his family's from Naples, but they were,
Again?
yes.
Did he know Aldo?
No, he didn't know Aldo, and Aldo didn't know him.
Good.
Anyway, but he was an artist. He was a painter, and a lot of the painters I have around the house are his. He's the Sergio Leone.
You
the
mean
boyfriend.
Francisco or what? No.
No, Francesco's.
Okay,
that's somebody.
Sorry.
But no, so I had this Italian boyfriend, and then started at New American Library, and little unbeknownst to me, the boss that had hired me there, somehow had a crush on me.
Ooh.
And he used to hear me speaking in Italian, and he would go nuts because he thought that was the sexiest thing that he. I was on the phone constantly with this horrible boyfriend of mine.
Ti amo, ti amo.
No, niente ti amo. Vai a fanculo. More like that. Anyway, so it then turned out. Well, then it then turned out when I finally left. I finally left to go into the movie business, right?
Again, you
And-
left the boyfriend behind, the Italian?
I didn't have.
I
no.
see a pattern there.
Oh yes, no. He and I had broken up. He and I had broken up. But one of the horrible things about all of that, was that he and Alberto, in a horrible accident, he was killed.
Oh.
So he died about 6 months after he and I broke up. But it was just devastating. His parents were still there, and he was not driving. Alberto was driving, and Alberto was also an artist. He was a sculptor, and
Where did you meet him?
Sergio, I don't remember where I met him, but I don't know. But I did.
At the
I don't know.
Gaslight
No.
Cafe.
You know, I was at
The Beatnik.
Oh, wait a second. Before I got my publishing jobs, I was working at what is now Rizzoli. Rizzoli had just started in New York, and I was hired by one of their journalists to. Actually, they had the idea in the basement to start a school for Italians learning English. So I was hired to work because I was now bilingual. I was,
Right.
So, but then Rizzoli's son came along. He said, "No, I don't want this to be a school. I want it to be a screening room." And actually, Rizzoli's screening room is one of the great screening rooms in New York now. But that started back in the 60s, literally in the 60s. So I was all involved with Rizzoli before I started getting my jobs.
And that's where the Italian connection.
Well, that's where I met the Italian, of course, Sergio. So, and he and I were together about 3 years or something.
But
anyway,
okay, so you were 3 years there, but then you said, "Oh, I left him because you were lured into the movie business." How did that
well, I
happen?
wasn't. Well, what happened was one day I was in New American Library working, and my bosses. I had 3 bosses there. Two.
That's a lot of bosses.
I had a lot of bosses. Well, there was the super boss. Then there was the head of the hardcover, which was somebody named Bob Gutwillig. And then somebody in the softcover whose name was Ned Chase, who, by the way, is Chevy Chase's dad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was one of my bosses. He was my softcover boss, and Bob Gutwillig was my hardcover boss. And then the super boss was Ed. So that's why I had 3 bosses.
Okay.
Anyway, so and I didn't really. I was mainly in the the Ned Chase part of it, the soft cover. But then one day I get this note, or the assistant comes down. It's Bob Gutwell, who was super boss, and she comes down and says, she said, "We got this book. It's in Italian." And Bob says that you know Italian because he's heard you speaking Italian. Could you read this book for him and then tell? I said, sure. I'll never forget it. It was called
Clever Bob.
Yes, La Bandiera Bianca di Cefalonia. It's the white. It was the white. It was the white flag of Cefalonia. When they gave up and gave up on the Germans and me.
And were you able to translate the
I
whole
read
book?
it. I didn't have to translate it.
Just a summary?
I did a summary and told them, what the whole thing was about, et cetera, et cetera. So
He wanted to get closer to you, that Bob.
please. By the time I left, within a week, he was on the phone. But that's, about, now that you're in the movie business, maybe I could sell you something.
Well, let's wait. That's a big jump. Okay. So, why did you leave the publishing there? Then you must have had an offer or a thing.
An offer. I went and had this interview with a guy who's from publishing, looking like some old shoddy guy. He didn't look like movies at all in the movie business. Anyway,
what do people in the movie business look like?
Well, they don't look the way this slump looked.
Okay.
Anyway, so I started there, and as I said, within a week, I got a call from Bob's assistant saying, "Well, now that I'm not in the business, Oh, and by the way, he was going to take me. They were all making a big move from New American Library because the thing is, it was owned by who are the people that own the L.A. Times, that family, whatever.
Chandlers?
The Chandlers. Anyway, this New American Library was owned by. It was a big conglomerate.
Wait.
It was a big conglomerate, and so they were moving from New American Library. This was Bob Gutwillig, Ed. And not Ned.
Three
Ned
bosses,
big bosses. And they had invited me to join them to go to World, which was strictly hardcover.
Yeah.
And I was very excited. I was kind of planning to do that. I mean,
Okay.
they were talking about it.
But
the whole thing. But then suddenly I got this, call from Bob's assistant that there was this movie job open. Was I interested? And I said, sure, what is it? And it turned out to be major. It was ABC Pictures at the time. It was called something else. I can't.
Yeah, who cares?
Anyway, you're right. And so I went for an interview, and they said, aren't you going to put on lipstick? It's movies, And I said, no, I'm not putting on lipstick. Anyway, so I went for this interview.
And what was the job that you were interviewing?
I was being interviewed to be not a story editor. No, to be an acquisitions, a creative. Right. Mm-hmm. That part is supposed
finding
to
material.
Yeah, finding material. Mm-hmm. That's what it was all about. And I obviously knew a lot of agents, and they were all very impressed, et cetera, et cetera. So I got the job. Mm-hmm. And I remember I then got a call from Bob saying, from his assistant, Bob would like to get together with you because, maybe he can sell you some books now that you're in the movie business.
Maybe he
Bob.
Placed you there. That's why his assistant
It
gave
turns
you
out, exactly. Exactly. He had been trying to get
smart
out of the company.
businessman he is.
Yes. Well, first he offers me a job to go with him to the other thing, and then suddenly he's maneuvering this whole thing to get me out of the company.
Who knows? Maybe it was all plotted.
It was deeply plotted. Deeply plotted. Anyway, so I left, and then I'll never forget our first meeting. It was supposed to be a meeting. Of course, it was in the afternoon. It was very hot. It was June. And I don't remember the exact date, but it was very, very shortly after. What's his name? The other Kennedy.
Bobby.
Bobby got killed, literally.
Wow.
And our first date was going to this fancy place, very fancy apartment on Park Avenue, where the Kennedy people were Bobby's people, but also. What's his name? The guy that was running for, he was a left winger kind of I can't remember his name. I can't remember anybody's name. Anyway, but he actually won the nomination and lost the election. But anyway, so we went to this thing, which was basically political because they were trying to get Bobby's people aboard for this other thing, and And so it was, I remember standing on stairs. It was very packed. The whole thing was very, very packed. And afterwards, Bob said, so this was, we were supposed to be having a meeting about his books and things. So then he said, let's go to dinner. So we went to dinner. By the end of dinner, it was, I mean, he came to my apartment and he told me everything that he had been plotting for the whole year, that he had his eye on me for quite some time. Anyway, this is a man, he's married with 2 children, by the way.
Oh.
But he had a very bad reputation. He was always...
He's a ladies' man?
He was a ladies' man. But you have to appreciate... Well, you do, because you know what he looks like.
Oh, yeah.
You know what he looks like. I always had the most gorgeous boyfriends. I mean...
Aldo.
Well, Aldo wasn't. Aldo was not one of the gorgeous ones. He was adorable. He was very... But Aldo was not.
Okay, so then it was on with you and Bob.
Yes, it was on with me and Bob.
Okay.
And, yeah, and that went on for...
How did that feel, knowing that he was married?
Oh, he already had a horrible reputation,
No, I mean for you, like, because you're such a feminist, and you would be like, siding with the women, and like, for example, I once dated somebody who I didn't know who was married, who was like not revealing that to me, and that was like a total deal breaker, because I would say, like, I would never do that to another woman.
Right. Well, it turns out I wasn't doing much to this other woman. The kids, Rusty. Rusty was the other woman. And she had her own life. And, by the way, was a lesbian. Besides, yeah. And Bob knew this. I mean, they had, obviously, they had a family. They had a whole, 2 kids and everything. But anyway, it was also summertime, because that was when the moon landing was, by the way. Mm-hmm. And it was summertime, so she was away. They had a house in East Hampton. So she was gone with the kids for the entire summer. So that's when this whole thing really kind of took off. Anyway, but he was always in Moscow, Sonia, and I'm sure she knew, but she had her girlfriends and, whatever.
It was probably the time where she couldn't be openly gay, and it was like, okay, one gets married and whatnot. But from Bob's end, that's interesting.
Well,
yeah,
his trajectory is he was really outrageous. He was anyway, but he stopped doing all that presumably when he and I got together.
Okay,
but it was very exciting because he was always going to Washington. He was doing aside from his job, because he was now at World Publishing, which but he was also always doing this newsletter that he did before they became really popular with Evans and Novak, who were 2 famous Washington Post writers. Mm-hmm. And Bob always published. He did 2 things that were astonishing for everybody in book publishing knows it. He started doing sports books and making them huge, huge. His first one was a book called Ball 4, about, he was a football player, the guy, and then he had an accident. Bob did this book. The first one he did, Ball 4, became a huge bestseller. And so suddenly he had all these athletes that he was, which he always loved. I mean, he's also passionate about sports. I mean, he watches them constantly. And which I find very interesting. This is a whole New York intelligentsia thing. All the men, all the macho, all the writers and everything. They're always into all the ball players,
the Yankees and the Mets.
Anyway, so this all started during that summer when he was around all the time, and then but like, I didn't know he was married, etc. I mean, that was not a secret; everybody knew it. But anyway. Yeah, so I eventually moved into the movie business, and
so you were at ABC. And then how long were you there?
What was it called? It was not, the company was not called.
It doesn't matter.
How long was I there? I was there until they closed down in 1969. Okay. 1970. I was there for about 2 years, 2.5 years.
And did you find them good material?
Oh yeah, I did. Okay. I mean, we made. They shoot horses, don't they? We made. I can't think of.
So that was your entree into moving pictures,
right. And also it was also my entree to Hollywood, because the person who there was only really one producer that came to New York all the time looking for material that knew this was the answer, and it was Tony Bill, who's an actor, and was also a great friend of Julia. Julia became a partner with Tony Bill. Julia was in New York too. I didn't know her in New York, but when she came out here,
Julia Phillips.
Julia Phillips, and she had been with the magazine, and she had also worked for First Artists, which was Paul Newman. It was Barbara Streisand too. Paul Newman, Barbara Streisand, Steve McQueen, and a fourth actor. And they were their boss, not their boss. The thing they all had in common was David Beagleman was their agent. So this became First Artists, and she used to look for material for them. I was looking for material for by this time it was ABC Pictures, but it was called like Palomar. Palomar was what it called. Anyway. So, but eventually, it changed hands. Palomar did. Edgar Sherrick was my boss, and he moved on to some other company, and then somebody who eventually became an agent in the CAA. He was a very nice guy, but it was not that much going on. It was sort of in transition, and that's when I decided to leave. I mean, that job was falling apart. And
where were you going? Just looking for another job?
No, I had been offered. I had gotten a call while I was at this company, Palomar, from somebody, Peter Guber's office, from Columbia. And they were interested in me. They know that I was very connected to publishing and blah, blah, blah. And
they were out in California?
No, that's the punchline. I'm saying, okay, when do you want to get together? They said, well, you're going to have to fly out here. And I said, where are you calling from? You have to understand, Columbia Pictures was New York on Fifth Avenue. That was the main office.
Right.
And then all the executives were there. I thought they were calling from
down the
Fifth
street.
Avenue, down the street. So he said, no, you're going to have to fly out here. I said, what, are you kidding me? I'm not moving to California. Forget it. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Literally. So then 3 or 4 months later, everything starts falling apart, including Bob, who's also disappeared on me somehow. And I just decided without...
And you called them back and said, wait a second.
No, I didn't call them back until I got out here. I was gone. I was going.
Okay, so where were you? You bought a ticket to L.A.?
I bought a ticket to L.A. Bob thought I had taken the car. He had his car, which was like a red Roadster or whatever it was, something expensive, whatever. And it was down in my basement because that apartment was mine. So, and then, well, that's when, by the way, things started overlapping with Sam Waterston, who was married to my author, Barbara Waterston. So anyway, but that was very short-lived. We became great friends. We never had much of an affair. Anyway, but then I left. I remember he and Barbara drove me to they escorted me to the
airport.
To the airport, and I ended up in California without a place to stay.
And you didn't know anybody out here?
The only person who I knew, and we had kind of coordinated this, of all things, Kit Carson from Texas.
Right.
Texan. Anyway, so he had a friend who had a garage that was an apartment that I could stay in.
In L.A.?
In L.A., yeah. And it was actually in Hollywood, somewhere in West Hollywood.
Right. But you came out here on spec. So
on spec, totally on spec.
Just thinking
I hadn't even called the Columbia because that was months ago,
right.
But I figured I wasn't going to call them when I settled down.
Right.
But, I also started, I didn't even come to L.A. I went to...
San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Oh, wait, wasn't there a commune, a state?
Yes, that was a commune. Before I came down to L.A.,
How did you connect with that commune?
Well, I'm not sure. I remember staying in somebody's apartment.
Yeah.
And he sort of made a pass, and I didn't like his skin, so I don't know what happened with all of that. But I ended up in the woods. I ended up at some wedding in the woods, right? And it was great. It was fabulous. It was everything you could imagine in Muir Woods. Here I am coming from Brooklyn, and it was just gorgeous. And there were all these hippie kids, and one of them I became very friendly with. And he had a bus. He was living in.
But it was not Ken Kesey. It was not the Merry Pranksters.
Not quite. It was Buddy. It was Buddy Mullaney. Have you ever met Buddy?
No.
Well, he was the person that I met at this commune, right?
Okay.
And I moved into the back of his
Bus.
That's his bus. He had, and but it was parked at this commune, so I could use the bathroom and all this, and stay there for a week. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Eventually, I had to go back because I think I had a ticket already. I think my ticket just stopped in San Francisco, and then I was going
You
on.
decided
to New
to
York.
make a little pit stop.
Yes, a little pit stop. That was great. I loved that. I had a great time there, and I made friends with Buddy Mullaney, who then turned out to be my dealer here. In L.A.
Oh, that Buddy.
That's Buddy. That was Buddy. That's where I met Buddy.
Of course I met Buddy.
Of course you met Buddy. Anyway, so Buddy ended up in L.A. I ended up in L.A. And I did have this apartment right on, right above where
In that garage?
I did, yes, I was in the garage.
Yeah.
And the main house had a couple, a director whose name I can't remember now, but he was very famous, and it was a huge house. And I had the
guest apartment.
Yeah, I had the guest little apartment, which was one of the first nights that I was
What
there.
year are we talking now?
We're talking
I lost
70
track.
or 71.
Okay. Oh yeah, right.
It was either 70 or 71, which is a big question for me, and I could find out which it was
Because when you bought your house, right?
Well, no, I bought my house 3 years later, but I moved into my house October 71. So I arrived, I think,
as a renter.
as a renter. Well, so I think I arrived right after New Year's, by the way. I arrived at the beginning of the year. And who was at the airport to meet me but Bob Gottwillig, who was suddenly gotten, connected to the fact that I was living now in California and blah, blah.
Was he
met me at the
stalking
airport.
you?
He wasn't stalking me, but he always knew where I was somehow.
That's impressive. Go
yeah.
Bob.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please. Anyway, but by that time,
I want her
so over
back.
him. I was very over him. But anyway, well, actually not over him, because then we continued for a couple of years here. He always showed up when I had interest in anybody else. Somehow his tentacles were up. He always managed to, to show up in L.A. Anyway, that went on. Yes, that did go on. Because I remember he met me at the airport.
Wow.
When I arrived.
And did he move into the garage apartment with you?
No.
Or was he just
No,
visiting?
I didn't have a garage apartment then. I didn't have anything then.
Oh.
But what I did have was the guy who I went to visit in Sausalito is the one that had this house. He owned this big house that was rented, but he always lived in the garage and had this little apartment. So I was going to take over his little apartment because he was staying up there. He was writing. He was doing things up in San Francisco, not San Francisco.
But then Bob went back
Sausalito.
to New York?
No, Bob was
eventually?
always just traveling. He was always at a hotel or something because because he was back at Danielle Filippaki's company, Hachette Filippaki, and he was major. He was opening
Oh, yeah, he
up
stayed
all
there for a long time.
He was there forever. And
So, but when you were here then in the garage apartment, then, I mean, a couple of weeks have passed. Didn't you, have to make
well,
an
I immediately
income
made
or
contact.
something?
I immediately made contact because now we're talking about, 63? No, I'm
No,
at the
we're
end
in
of
the
60.
70s right
Yeah,
now.
we're talking about the 70s, early 70s. The war was going on, so I had already gone with Bob a couple of times to Washington, and I was trying to find out what was going on in L.A. Nothing political, there's a war on, guys, aren't you? Whatever. So I finally made some contact with a group called the Entertainment Industry for Peace and Justice, and it was Jane Fonda and what's his name?
Peter?
No.
I don't know.
No, the guy who's the father. Oh God! All right, I can't remember.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
okay,
matter.
so.
But it was
we'll
Jane
find
Fonda
out.
and Donald Sutherland. It was Sutherland, Donald
okay.
Sutherland.
Wow.
They were together. They were a couple.
Right.
And so I joined the group, and actually they put me on the payroll. I think they gave me like $50 a week or $100 a week. So,
Was that a lot back then? Or was it?
No, it wasn't a lot. It's just enough to live. So I
live?
could, yeah. So and then I got an apartment. I got an apartment just above La Brea. If you continued up La Brea past Hollywood and then made a left, about 4 or 5 houses, I found a little apartment that was that I was renting.
So
And by
you
this
were in
time-
a nonprofit activist group.
Right.
That was your first kind of paid job when you came out
Well,
here.
yes.
But was
Exactly
your
that.
intention to get into the film industry at this point?
Well, I was already in the film industry.
Yeah,
I had
but-
already been offered a job.
Yeah,
and
I
then I
know.
contacted Peter and said, "All right, well, I've changed my mind. I've now come out here." See,
And they haven't hired anybody yet?
They didn't hire anybody, but they also found out that their bosses in New York found out that he had been contacting me and offering me a job, and they didn't like that. They didn't want any creative people here. They wanted to control what movies were made, and then when Peter was supposed to be in charge of the whole,
What was Peter's role then?
he was the head of the company. He was he was a senior. He was like 28 years old. 29
But who
years
were
old.
they who didn't like that he was?
Well, it was the Schneiders. The company was still owned by the Schneiders. Everything got
And they were in New
transformed.
York.
They were in New York. The whole yes. They were in New
Okay,
York.
so then did he invite you in? Then did he still have the
Well,
job
no.
available?
So that yes. Well, no. The job was not available.
Yeah.
And he couldn't hire me. But after a couple of months, I was with EIPJ, I got arrested. With a group. Well, I was driving.
You're an
a group
outlaw.
in the valley. I was. We were looking for this church where this famous writer, speaker, who's very famous anti-war speaker, and so I was. I'm the one that's driving around in the car and taking everybody, and we can't find this place. So I stop in the middle of the street because I see a police car to ask them where to find this church, and they say, "Oh, is that where Kunstler is talking?" What the guy's name? It was Kunstler. Anyway, is that where Kunstler is having? I said yes. So he gave me a ticket. He said he gave me a ticket for stopping in the street to ask him direction. That was so. It was after that I called Peter Group. I said, "I'm out of here." I got arrested last night, and they did. And if I hadn't,
Wait, he gave you a ticket, but he
no, it was not a
arrested
ticket. They arrested me,
like handcuffs and
yes,
all.
and handcuffs.
Took
They
you to
me,
jail.
Well, they took me to the station, whatever. It was actually. Anyway, I can't remember whether I paid or I didn't pay. I had to call somebody.
But you got out. You got bailed out.
Yes, I got bailed out. I remember calling because it was late, getting somebody at the office,
Yeah.
the IPJ, to send one of the lawyers with the
From
money.
the organization.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And then
So-
you said, "That's it. I'm going." Into
Right. That's when I called Peter Group. I said,
real
"I'm leaving."
job.
I didn't have a job,
Yeah.
but I knew that I could. I know I had already been solicited by. Where do you go to work out in the mid California? That's
Gold's Gym or
no,
whatever?
not the gym.
What do you mean? Where Esalen?
Esalen. Esalen. I have been offered a job by Esalen. It was a book job. You know, they had an imprint. Esalen.
They had
you
a
know.
publishing thing?
Yeah,
their
they had a
own?
publishing imprint.
Back in the day, probably.
in the day.
Wow, your life would have changed completely different.
Right,
Turned
totally.
out into, you would be
No,
like
but I was
sitting
really
in the
much
hot
more
tubs
interested in
there right now.
movies. Right. No, exactly. But so I said I remember calling Peter and saying, I'm leaving town. I'm not going back. I'm probably going up to San Francisco. I may be taking this job with Esalen, and I think they were based in San Francisco. I said, I think I'm going to San Francisco. He said, no. He said, don't go to San Francisco. You don't want to do that. You don't want to work for Esalen. You want to come work here at Columbia. I said, I'd love to come work at Columbia, but you haven't offered me a job. He said, you're going to come in on Monday. We're going to put you downstairs, but I will work it out.
Wow.
I will work it out. So it was, but the fact of my leaving that really prompted him to say, we'll take care of it. Come in on Monday, and you're going to start working. And I did.
Wow. And what was your entry job when you first started?
Creative. Read a lot and find projects.
And write summary or like
no, I
what is
wasn't.
it
I
called?
no,
Like-
I was the boss. I was the boss of the story
boss?
editing department.
Wow.
Yeah, no. People did the reading for me.
Okay.
So we
You were
had readers.
overseeing that.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like in publishing,
Yeah,
kind of.
but basically, everybody
On
had
the other
ideas.
end
right?
of the spectrum.
So anyway, yes.
What movies were they making at the time?
Well, I know. Well, Mike Frankovich was there, and he was doing movies. This is very much the '60s more than the '70s. I mean, he was Ray Stark. These are the people I was working with.
Right.
These are really very, very well-known producers, and I was looking for material for them and telling them what to read and what to buy and whatever.
So what is the path once you're within this system of, like, let's say, in your case, Columbia, then you had a group of people reading for you, and then you go, bingo, here's a really good project.
Right, yeah.
And then you moved up to being what? What's the next level?
Being a production executive.
And that means
And then I
that
was
you
made a
make
vice
the
president.
choice.
No, I don't make the choice. I'm still recommending. I mean,
Okay.
the only people that make the choice, in fact, it wasn't even Peter that made the choice. It was still
Right.
New York.
Yeah.
When I first started there, New York was still in charge. So, but that was changing. Within a year, They were going bankrupt. They were in very, very bad shape, and and suddenly all these Wall Street New Yorkers came in, and Peter was there. Peter
And they
stayed,
had
I
no
stayed.
clue about the business,
They
so
had
they
no business,
gave him
right.
like carte blanche. Or-
Not really. They
more control.
well, also no, but also he was taken over by David Begelman. They hired David Begelman to come in
Okay.
as his boss, as Peter's boss. So he took over the company. Peter did.
But what was your
And then I was
next
still a
thing?
creative executive. That's what I was.
And then what were you doing as that beyond
telling them what to buy and what not to buy, and being part of their meetings and being.
And what was
they
the
were perfect.
first exciting thing that you were a big decision maker in
God.
buying or something?
Well, I'll
that,
tell you one thing that I fought very hard for, and nobody wanted to make it at all. Is a little movie called Shampoo.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
Wow.
Oh yeah, I was very involved in that.
Wait a second. What was it? Was kind of a little bit based on real people, right? Like because the whole hairdresser thing and Barbara.
Yeah. I
Streisand
mean,
and-
everybody knew who the guy was. I didn't know the guy, but because I hadn't been there, he had a big reputation. But who cared about that guy? I mean, you had Warren Beatty.
exactly. And
That
Goldie.
was, yeah, right. I know it was great. That was fabulous. I'm just trying to think. One of the other books I bought. This was early. It was a cop book. I think it was.
A cop?
Yeah, a cop. It was a thriller. That was one of the first things that I.
But your
And it
kind
became
of
a series later
legacy
on.
was also a little movie called Taxi Driver.
Oh, that was a little later. Well, it wasn't actually.
So tell me about this
Oh,
time
no.
we're at now, all
Okay,
the way
now I've
until
just
then.
started. So I started at Columbia now, and one of my first phone calls, by the way, was because they were totally in transition, and the company is being taken over, and was being settled on the West Coast, not New York anymore. The Schneiders were out; they practically bankrupted the company, but it was taken over by these New Yorkers, whose names I can't remember at the moment. But I was very involved with them. They, I was one of the transition people because of. Anyway, so I remember. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
So no, but when you said first you started like recommending them the project, and
Right.
then what was the next step? Because I guess then you change get more responsibility or more decision making once
Well,
you
I mean, I was
once you
always.
promote into the next level.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Kinda?
yeah. Well, first of all, they moved me out of the basement. I literally started an office in the basement. They moved me upstairs to the, no, I was indispensable. Actually, there were people that came and went that they tried. There was oh God, I can't remember.
How many years were you there total in
At Columbia, from 71 to 9 years.
Wow.
And I was just short of 10 years. I didn't know this. I could have gotten a whole thing in 10 years. Had no idea.
You get a little needle.
So I moved out. Well, I moved out of the executive suite and moved across to where the producers were because they gave me a production job when I left.
And is that when you Taxi Driver was the real first
Well,
profound,
Taxi Driver
like,
was really my first project that I
as an executive.
As an executive, that I saw all the way through from beginning to end. Also with Julia
and
exactly.
Michael.
Julia and Michael. And this
Julia
was- yeah.
Phillips.
Right,
shout
and
out.
I
met her. I was like lucky to meet her through you before she passed.
Before she
was a
passed,
character.
she was a major character.
Remember when we did the table read for pony rides at her apartment? She was like,
Well, it was upstairs in that conference room. It was, well, did you ever see her apartment? What,
yeah.
She lived.
And there were all these young guys always around
yeah.
and stuff, even in her. Yeah. So I read all of her books, though You'll Never Eat Lunch in This Town Again and Under the Affluence. They were pretty.
Right.
So how did you meet Julia? Through the project?
No, well, actually,
Oh, were you
I met
friends
Julia,
before?
believe it or not. No, we had met at 933 La Brea, which is where EIPJ had offices, and where somebody else, I think it was Tony Bill, had an office. And she started working with Tony. She came out here because they invested. Michael had some money. They had some money.
Were they from the East Coast as well?
Who? No.
Julia.
Oh, yeah, they're New Yorkers, absolutely. And so she came out because they gave Tony Bill money to option I can't remember what the name of the movie was, but you could look it up. But it was. That's why they came out here. So she was a producer already.
Did she find the Taxi Driver? Did she find the
No,
screenplay?
Taxi Driver was my project.
So the screenplay
I brought her in.
Submitted to you?
Yes, by my reader. I had a reader named.
Who cares? Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Okay, well, no, he's famous now
I
because he
know,
wrote
but-
Taxi Driver. Anyway, I don't have to remember his name. It'll come to me.
He
But anyway,
wrote it? The reader?
Yes, my reader wrote it. My reader wrote Taxi Driver. So I was the first one to.
Paul Schrader.
Paul Schrader, thank you very much. Paul Schrader was my reader.
No way.
And you know who else
That's
is my reader?
wicked.
I had another reader. Oh, God. Well, he became a really good friend. And I can't remember.
So he said, hey, there's something I've written. Would you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like
Would
that?
you take a look at it? And I said.
And you're
but
like,
he wanted-
the reader.
No. I read it, and I knew that it was fabulous. The only thing was that I could. This was also in the transition when David was first coming in, because I remember the first thing I did.
David who?
David Beagleman
Oh.
was coming in with this whole new bunch of New York investors. They were all Wall Street people, and David was going to be their guy. Right? He was going to run the studio, and I remember he was in New York meeting with these big mockers already, who I had already met because they had come out before, and I remember calling him and saying, "Listen, I have a script that I want to buy." And so I think you should take a look at it because I have it exclusively now, but I'm not going to have it exclusively forever. And he said, "What's it called?" And I said, "Taxi Driver." He said, "I know that script. We're not doing it." That's literally. He did know it because it turns out that somehow it had gotten to him because he had Paul Newman, he had Steve McQueen. He was, their agent, right?
Although Paul Schrader was your reader?
Yes, he was my reader.
So he
but
was sending it out to others as well.
Somehow, David had it. They had tried to get an actor. One of the actors said, David said, "There's no way I'm making that movie." And he said it, actually said, "I'm not coming into Columbia Pictures to make that sort of movie."
Why was he so against it?
Because he wanted something commercial, and he thought this was very difficult.
And it was dark. And
it was dark, and nobody's going to be interested. He fought it all the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, but eventually, and he also knew Julia, because Julia, I think, also worked for First Artists, which were all that group in New York, of Steve McQueen and all that. So he knew Julia, and Julia knew him. So eventually, we just.
So how
wore
did
him
it
out.
then? How did you push it through to be
We
made?
wore him out. We actually wore him out till finally. By this time, he's not
Like
moved-
wrestling or?
No, not wrestling. No, I mean, if you think I'm a big mouth, Julia was even a bigger mouth, and she was pregnant. Oh,
Wait a
God.
second, but you found the screenplay. But how did
Right.
Julia get in the picture?
I probably get her involved in it. I don't remember but obviously I had the screenplay, and I didn't want to let it go, and I probably gave it to Julia, and Julia wanted to do it. Julia had already made.
So she had more muscle
thing.
to convince them, or
No. Together we said you have to. All right, then. So finally we beat up on David so badly. He said, "All right, if you can make it for $1 million, I'll give you $1 million." So of course he went out. We got a budget that was 99999, and he said, "Okay, we'll do this." And this
It
was
was done
it already
for
had wait,
$1 million?
it's already been packaged, mainly by Julia. I can't remember if it was me or Julia, but I think it was Julia. We then got Marty Scorsese and Bobby De Niro. That's the cast we wanted. That's who we got. And when we mentioned this to Beagleman, "Oh, I know those guys, etc." This is not. I'm not doing this movie. I'm not coming to to Columbia Pictures to make movies like that. I mean, he was the usual. Anyway, so but then when he was there, we prevailed on him, and he said we do it for $1 million. So we got this budget for $1 million, and by that time, I think Bobby De Niro had started Mille Novecento in Italy. So that put the kibosh on starting. We couldn't do it because this was going to take a year for him to make that movie. So, but we said, okay, we'll wait for them. We'll wait for Marty. And Marty then took a job with an awful movie that he made at Warner Brothers. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. It wasn't awful, but it was not Marty Scorsese because we had already seen Mean Streets, and that's what
it was more like a director for hire job.
Right, for that, because
Not
he had to
his
do something because
love project.
Right. No, it was
But
not
he
a
was
love
into Taxi Driver.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah.
By this time, we already had the agreement with David that if we did it for $1 million, he would do it. So we had that in our pocket. By the time we actually made the movie, it was like $2.5 million because it was like 3 years later until till Bobby came back, and then so it was all about.
Did you make another movie in between those
Oh no,
3
we
years?
made a lot of movies. I made a lot. I was involved with a lot of movies. Shampoo. There was a movie, the one that The Onion. Was it called The Onion? The Onion Fields. Yes, The Onion Fields.
I have never heard of
No,
it.
but it was a thriller. That's the one I said. It was a cop story.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And I think Mike Frankovich made it. And it was then that and I was also working with Ray Stark and Barbara. We became very good friends, Barbara and I. Mainly through John, her boyfriend, who was my hairdresser. Literally. And
That's what I'm referring to, like when you watch Shampoo, like
Right.
it's a little bit taken from
right. No, but it's not him, it's
art
another guy.
imitating life,
Right,
kind of.
Right.
little
Yes.
bit.
No, but he was. But it was not John. It was somebody else, whose name I don't know. Because I don't remember the name. But it was It was somebody famously.
John, what was John's last name?
John
Barbara's
Peters. John Peters.
John Peters, and then he became a big producer.
Yeah, he became a big producer.
From hairdresser to producer.
Yeah.
But do you think because he was married to Barbara Streisand?
No, he wasn't married to Barbara Streisand, but he was going with Barbara.
Yeah.
And I remember he brought me. I said he wanted. I was a big contact for him because he had started. He was my hairdresser when I just arrived and was living in a garage, and now I'm a VP of Columbia Pictures. So he said, I said, well, find me something. I'm perfectly happy to make you a producer. Just come up with something. So he did. He came up with this thing called Eyes, and it was written by a student at USC. Who happens to be John Carpenter. It was
Wow.
John Carpenter was like 18, 19 years old, whatever. He was at USC, and and it wasn't even a script then. It was just a treatment. And I thought it was really good. It was a great.
And you made
thriller.
it.
Yeah, we developed it. It wasn't made until '79. The year that I left, it was finally made, but I had developed it.
But then, so you made a couple of movies until finally you were able to make Taxi Driver because Robert De Niro now was available. He came back from Italy.
Yes.
And then did you guys did you have any idea what an impact this movie would
Well,
have?
I always knew that it was going to be huge internationally because somehow after living in Italy and whatever, looking at these gossip magazines, it was always about crazy people in America. They all thought that we were all deranged murderers, right?
Psychopaths.
And we were all psychopaths, right? And here was this movie about this psychopath.
Yeah.
So I knew internationally it was going to be big. Everybody thought I was crazy. They said, "Oh, well, we'll humor her because now Marty's kind of more famous, and Bobby and everybody by the time we got it made." But
and then Julia and you became great friends.
well, Julie and I were already by that time we were already friends. As soon as when we bumped into each other at 933 La Brea when I was with EIPJ, and she was already making a movie with Tony Bill. They had offices right in the same building. So, so I knew her very
And then
well.
did you
She
make
was living out
another-
at the beach. She was living out
Right.
at the beach, and I was there practically every weekend.
Yeah.
And all the holidays. I remember there was a New Year's Eve party that I went to out at the beach where they were all there. Steven Spielberg already, and Marty, and oh God, what's the name of? He's a hard nose. He used to make westerns and always with guns and things. He was an awful person. I can't remember his name.
But not Clint Eastwood.
No. This was a young guy.
He's not an awful person. But I remember when your friend Ed Limato, who was this
Right.
iconic agent,
Yeah.
used to throw his pre-Oscar parties.
Right.
And we used to go there together. Like, you could have thrown a bomb in this party and Hollywood would have been wiped out.
Hollywood
And I would go there and they're like, "Hi, Roz," and it's like, "Oh, it's Steven Spielberg." Oh my God, it was like crazy.
yeah.
There's Chuck
It
Nicholson
was.
to the left
And see, Ed was a
Madonna
good
to the
friend.
right.
Ed was a good friend. How did Ed become such a good friend?
Probably
he was a
as-
New Yorker. He was a New Yorker also, and he was looking.
And that
for-
was always a bonding, right?
Yeah,
when
right.
you were kind of
Absolutely
in the West
but
Coast.
also, I wanted Richard Gere. What the hell did I want? Richard
Didn't you
Gere?
do a movie with Richard
I
Gere?
did. Well, no. Eventually, no.
No, you were kind of discovering him or something, and
I was. We were
I
very involved in
remember
a
you-
project called Folks, which was done by my boyfriend in jail. Mm-hmm. Do you remember that?
John.
John. Right. Okay. So that was a whole other story. But that
He
was
wrote
also
it,
Part, he
oh,
wrote
right?
it. He had written it in jail and given it to this character. He used to come and talk, to talk to guys in jail and writing. He did a writing workshop in jail, and this was already a script. It was called Folks, and I loved it. I thought it was great. So I went up to Lompoc. I guess John was out for a couple of months in between. He had been let out, but then I don't know, he ran out of money, he robbed a bank,
Right.
whatever, and he was back in prison.
He robbed a bank?
Yeah, he did. Well, he was a bank robber. That's how he made a living. He started because he was early in the 60s. He was in Vietnam. He was
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
We didn't know about that then, but no, he worked
For sure.
He worked for the CIA as he got drugs and everything. He was a drug dealer, basically.
Wow.
While in the army.
Was he very did he tell you all these stories, or was he
yeah.
very
No.
hush about it?
No, there was nothing to be hush about. I mean, this is already quite a bit later. Than
I know, but not that you sign an NDA with the CIA, but it's
but he was. Listen, he had already served time. This was not his first time in prison.
Yeah.
So
he was already an ex-convict.
Yeah, he was an ex-convict. Yeah, but when I met him, but by the time
I only dated outlaws, not ex-convicts. You're like
right. I went hardcore. I was always hardcore.
Wow.
Anyway, so so that was one of my famous projects that we carried along year after year, and was finally made. Well, it wasn't. It was probably made. Yeah, it wasn't even so bad. It was probably made within 2 or 3 years of.
Yeah, but Taxi Driver was clearly one that was for the books. Would also be here to stay, and it's funny. I actually thought about that earlier too. I was like, this was kind of the original Joker. It's kind of like it has a lot of parallels with the. Development of the psychopath.
Except they always blame the mother. It's always it was very much like that. Actually,
right?
Joker was absolutely.
Yeah.
I met his mother, his father, John's family. They were the trash of the world, literally Texas trash.
No, I mean, but Taxi Driver.
Yes, well.
Yeah.
Right, but those are the characters I was always attracted to. I mean, this was. Anyway,
bad book.
But that was a great script. It was never a book.
And did you do Close Encounters as well?
Yes, I did Close Encounters.
Was that after?
Yes, much after.
We just watched. Did you come? I think it was 2 years ago.
In that theater.
Yeah,
right.
at the Silent Theater, we saw the original on film for Roland's birthday as a surprise. That was so cool.
Yeah,
I mean, it's such a great movie, but it's so outdated in terms of
Close Encounters.
Yeah, but it's still awesome.
Yeah,
it's still
great. That was great, and it's always been. Roland talks a lot about it because I've never been interested in fantasy.
Yeah.
I hate fantasy.
Yeah, me too.
But,
I'm not.
So science fiction is fantasy also. But But what I loved about that was that it was totally rooted in a real person, a real event.
Yes.
And I remember Roland saying that's the kind of science fiction I want to make. It's also rooted in reality and not.
And
fantasy.
a lot of the science fiction, in the olden days, is reality now. If you look at it.
Yeah.
Except there's also I like projects I was very interested in Jodorowsky, when Alejandro Jodorowsky, he was supposed to make Dune, and there's this amazing book about his production designs and stuff. And he was actually last year or so, he was at the Hammer Museum and it did a talk about it. And
really?
Screened it. Yeah, it was so interesting.
So he was, but he was not a director. He was.
He is a director too, but he's they never made it. Although apparently that book. There's originals of his book, that he did, a Bible.
Right.
No, with the production designs and everything.
Paintings.
That has been printed, but there's only very limited edition. Mm-hmm. And then apparently there's the original one, which it's like when you have the original Be Here Now by Ram Dass, that how he kind of cut and pasted it together as it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I find like if there's a really good story, you know, the premise of science fiction can be fascinating.
Yeah.
But I know what
but
you
the
mean
more-
with the fantasy is like but there's a big difference. Like fantasy is like science fiction is.
No, I know that, but to me, science fiction was always fantasy.
But it isn't.
But it isn't. No, not fantasy in the sense of Alice in Wonderland fantasy kind of thing.
But like, let's say Game of Thrones
Yeah.
is kind of a part of that genre, I would say. And
Definitely, but
I'm not
I never
into
watched
it.
it.
Me neither.
Never watched it.
Me neither.
They couldn't. I tried. I tried each time.
Everybody told me watch 3 episodes, and I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, no. I mean, I remember one of the episodes I watched. It was a naked woman. It was all about this naked woman walking through this village, and everybody. I said, "This is disgusting." I'm not. This is garbage. I mean, what did I know? Well, anyway.
So when they were shooting, and you were like the executive.
Well, it wasn't. I was not on set.
I was
not-
going to ask you. Never. You would visit.
I would visit.
right?
I would
Yeah.
visit exactly. But I was not on set.
And
until I
there,
was
so
producing.
you were not in deep enough to know any juicy little anecdotes that were
Not
happening?
really. But I read Julia's book, so there are plenty of anecdotes.
Yeah.
Plenty
Yeah.
of stuff.
That's-
Because those are all our movies. I mean, the
Yeah.
book is about a taxi driver.
And it was a wild time. It was like sex and drugs and rock and roll.
Well,
right?
yeah, exactly. But I got to tell you something. I hadn't at that point even taken cocaine. I was not doing it.
When
at
did
all.
you start taking cocaine?
Not, never very much of it. No, I did. I
Was
did,
it like
but-
a 80s thing?
No, it was also 70s.
Yeah.
No.
But
and-
70s
Julia
was the Quaaludes and all of that,
right,
wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. No,
But wasn't I was fascinated when I read Julia Phillips's book Under
Right.
the Effluence because she was freebasing,
That was later.
which is like
Yeah.
that's 80s,
That's it,
right?
Yeah.
And what is it like smoking cocaine or something like
I
that?
don't know. It is.
But it's very
lighting
destructive.
thing. It's very bad.
And she kind of
she was an addict. She was
full on.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about full on. I don't. I mean, it was always a matter of she was always comparing herself to what's his name, Robert Evans. She said he never got in trouble. He was doing everything. He was doing more drugs than I could even dream of.
because he was a man.
And yeah, that was exactly her point.
And
She got into real trouble. I mean, she was literally.
but she
fired
was
from
also
Close
quite
Encounters.
like eccentric, you know.
Well, she was eccentric. She was very. What do we call now? Honest.
But
She had
very
a big
bright.
mouth.
Yeah, she was
Very
no
smart,
bullshit. Yeah.
No bullshit.
Yeah.
Absolutely no.
That's what I liked about her because here everybody's
great.
like, oh yeah, it's interesting. They would never tell you I don't like it or I like it. It's
Yeah.
always like wishy-washy, you
Right,
know?
right,
Yeah,
right.
it's
No, she was a major character, but very authentic character. And,
Yeah.
And basically I was too. I mean, there was never any selling.
yeah.
We didn't have to sell. I mean, we used to go.
But those were also other times, I think, isn't it? Like if you think about, there would have never been like place for a Me Too movement or something or Time's Up because
Well-
it was normal that somebody would clap you on the ass or something. Isn't that?
Well, it wasn't normal, but yes,
was
it was normal.
accepted.
It was the behavior. I mean, it
Yeah.
was. But on the other hand, I never got it.
But for you
know,
women, it must have been tough, like in the men's world, like
Not
to
for
kind
me.
of stand your.
Not for me.
No?
I never got compromised by it. I never got. I mean, who should we call one of the so-called cads was Peter Cooper in the sense of the only thing he ever did was brag about how much sex he was having. Mm-hmm. That was
Was that a
part of it.
thing?
Yeah, that was his thing.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like
and-
trophy.
Yeah, whatever.
Trophy
But
hunting.
but I was not a person, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
that lent myself to that.
Of course.
No, and I mean, so it was never a problem for me.
No, I totally can relate to that because
Yeah.
I was, yeah.
I'm sure it
even
was the
in
same.
my era,
Right.
it was the same a little bit, and I
Right.
was like, no, not.
Yeah, I mean, I was I was never prepositioned. I was always, I was an executive, by the way.
Yeah.
That was a big deal.
Yeah. There was a
because
different respect level.
Yeah.
But then when you left Colombia, like, did you do when you did did the Who's That Girl with Madonna, right?
Right.
And I remember because I met Uli was working with a producer who was on it too. That I forgot his name. Was that after Columbia?
That was after Columbia. I left
So
Columbia
what did you do then? Were you an independent
I was
producer?
independent, and I always had an office somehow. I mean, I either at Columbia. First, I had an office at Columbia. Then I moved to Fox. I was invited by actually Laddie, Alan Ladd Jr. Whochamcallit was there already. What's her name? Oh God, Paula. Paula Weinstein was there. She was one of. She wasn't an executive then. And she was, well, I'm not going to get into her personal life, but she was very involved with somebody who worked for me back at Columbia for years, and a good friend of mine named David. Anyway, but
that means you moved to another studio as an independent producer
exactly.
because they like your work and they know that you can feed them with projects.
Exactly.
And that's why you did the Madonna movie?
Well, with the Madonna movie, how did I get that script? I don't even remember. But Madonna was attached, and
that was a fun movie.
It was.
Wasn't it Rosanna Arquette in this movie too?
No.
Yeah.
Was she in the movie?
Yeah. I think
Who's that girl? No.
That was the other girl.
I don't remember.
That was in the 80s.
That was in the
time
80s.
ago.
It was 86, 85.
When did you do that movie American Heart with Jeff Bridges? Was that after?
That was after. That was 92. That was early. That was in the 90s. 91.
But that was also an independent film, or did you do that still with your
No,
deal with a studio?
No, I mean the only I was at Fox, and stayed at Fox even after everybody had left, because then, now that I'm remembering it, the guys from Columbia took over Fox, the New York guys, the New York money men. So
the Wall Street dudes.
Right, the Wall Street dudes. They were the ones that came in after Laddie left. Laddie ended up at Warner Brothers,
But did you become independent because you could be a producer yourself instead of being the executive who's not on set and not creatively involved?
Well, first of all, I had a child.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
Right.
Everybody was, oh my God, you have to stop working. I mean, it was.
Was that a normal thing at the time? Like when you have a child,
you're not working? First of all, there were no women. There were no women in the business, and they all started once I got a job. Then others started getting jobs. But it was always like one woman per studio, whatever it was. It was ridiculous. Anyway, but. No.
So what was your motivation to leave?
Who's that girl?
No, to leave the executive kind of position. Yeah.
Well, the point is that I had, there were really no women running studios at that point.
Yeah.
But it started after.
So you knew this was not going to go any further. So you were going to go take the other.
And I had a child, and I was more independent. I wanted to be more my time.
Your own
more
boss.
My own.
Yeah.
Right.
I see.
And then I had another pregnancy.
Yeah.
I had 3 pregnancies in about 3 years. The first one I miscarried, then I had Annie, and then the second one I miscarried in the 5th month. It was horrible. Wow. It was horrible. And I just found out, by the way.
What do you mean?
I never wanted to know what the sex was. I told the doctor, don't tell me. I don't want any. It was born dead. So I never found out. But then I found out recently. In
How?
The last 5 years. Well, because somehow all these records. Yes, paperwork.
And you went through them?
Yeah, I did.
What was it?
It was a boy.
Oh my God!
It was a
boy.
Yeah. Wow. This is horrific for me. But
was that with Bob?
It was just Bob, but we had already split up, and then we were back together. It was not, I mean, I would have had the child. I was dying to have a child.
Yeah,
but
you wanted a second.
Kids.
You wanted a second child.
Oh, absolutely.
With or without him?
Yeah, without him, because he was already, gone. He already moved. He started working for Hachette Pill.
That's courageous. That's courageous to do that.
I never had second thought about it because I was making money.
Right. And you could have help.
I had help. Exactly. I was already living in that house.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes, of course. I already it was huge. I mean, it's huge. It's the way it is now because when I had Annie, we added all those back rooms in
Right.
the back, right? So yeah, I had a great life. At some point, I did think about moving back to New York,
Yeah.
and I couldn't afford it. I was offered a deal. It was with Warner Brothers. So if I had gotten that deal, and then somehow it disappeared, somebody else got it. They hadn't even conceived of the fact that I would be in New York feeding them material from New York, but going back and forth. I would,
But you didn't. You stayed.
So when that didn't come through, I said I can't move to New York. I can't afford it, not without a job, because I was already an independent producer. And anyway,
But then
so
you stayed an independent producer
Yeah.
pretty much, and I mean,
well, once in the 90s, I made 3 pictures in a row.
yeah.
In the course of about 3 years,
Right.
and always in Seattle or near Seattle.
And then you also made that movie Trade with Marco Kreuzbein.
Right.
When was
but
that?
That was
Yeah,
much later. That was 2004. 2004, 2005.
But it's kind of like, would you say like it's this, everybody who has a passion for something, and I find that in any field, like look at Keith Richards, they're like, when are the Stones retiring? Why would you stop doing what you love if
Exactly,
you can still do it and you love it?
Right, exactly.
Anybody, if it's a sports person or a producer, it's not that. And also I think what's your take on that? Because I find that very interesting, because this town is so, about age. Like for actors, for example, it's like, oh, she's in that certain age, we can't use her anymore or whatever. But even in the normal workplace, there's an age discrimination, I find. But I think age doesn't matter. Like, look at if you stand fully in life and you're informed and you have the juju kind of about participating, it's not anything that's in your way, right?
No, I never worried.
Did you
about it.
feel like you would get a little age discrimination later on when you were producing?
I never thought of it. I really never thought of it. I never thought I'd be discriminated against. To me, it was always about. I mean, I didn't love going out selling. I mean, that was
Right.
I much preferred being executive and being sold to.
Exactly, because
naturally.
then you don't.
But I gave away a lot of projects. I made, for example,
What do you mean
I
when
had-
you say giveaway?
projects that I had that
You didn't want to do, that you said you
I
do
was
it.
the executive. I gave it to producers
Uh-huh.
who became very, very rich. And one of those projects was something called Rocky. I got the script for Rocky.
Really?
And oh yeah,
Wow.
And I loved the script.
You
but
gave
he
it
wanted,
to Mario Casar, or who?
No,
was
no,
it at
no.
the
I
time
gave
who
it
did?
to
Sylvester Stallone.
no, no. These are 2 producers that I. that were
Wasn't
part
it?
of my-
Wasn't it Karolko who did Rocky?
Well, eventually.
Yeah.
Eventually. But I had Rocky, and I gave it to 2 of the producers I was working with there, Irwin Winkler and Bob Chartoff. Chartoff and Winkler. They were very well-known producers there.
And they gave it to Karolko?
No. They already had it from. I mean, I gave it to them with what's his name?
Sylvester Stallone?
Sylvester Stallone, yeah. And I said that I couldn't
Because he
get-
wrote
I-
it.
He wrote it, yes. And I said I couldn't get this made. He wanted to direct it. He only wanted to direct it. If he wanted to just star, that was fine. But no, he wanted to direct it. And I said I can't sell that.
Yeah.
To that, and then I gave it to Irwin and Bob Chartoff, and they took it to United Artists. So it started with United Artists that they. But then it was years until it was eventually.
So you had your hands in a couple of these
Oh.
legendary things.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you regret, or do you feel like you should have gotten a piece of the pie?
Never,
No.
never. I never felt cheated. I never felt no.
Because you
I
gave it away, basically.
I gave it away. Yeah, I
Right.
mean, I wasn't a producer at the time.
But
I was an executive?
was there a moment where you said, "Damn, I should have fought for it," or something?
Well, of course.
I mean, just because, not because you believed in the picture. I'm not talking about monetary,
Yeah, right.
gain. Or
Yeah, no.
anything.
For now the heads of studios, all their things, they're always credited somehow. Not then.
No,
We
now
were-
everybody who had like one
Well,
drop
yeah,
in it has
exactly.
like
Gets-
500
gets
in the
freaking
credits. It's like
credits,
500
exactly.
producers, and
Yeah.
everybody's so keen about which credit they get. It's like,
Yeah.
but I always find the real people that are that just want to
Do the work.
get the project made,
yeah.
and they're passionate about it. They don't care about that
Yeah.
shit.
No,
right?
I never worried about it. It just wasn't part of the. As an executive, you were an executive. You weren't a producer. You weren't any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I never resented it. Well, when I started producing, that was different. That was,
Are you having your eyes on something right now that you think?
Well, right now I'm involved in a documentary, which is my first documentary.
Wow.
And I think it's going to get made, but it's also taking time because it's not, it is foreign. Actually, it's probably,
Right.
it's going to be in Arabic.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's something that I really had decided at a certain point when I no longer had studios behind me that I would only do things I was really passionate about, and then this thing came along.
You mean also
article.
that something that has a social impact, kind of? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always been very political. That's
I know.
that's a non,
Yeah.
it's not, but
Constant.
yeah, it is a constant in my life, whether I'm doing movies about it or not. But also reality, it's so funny because I was always making those pictures. That's the things that attracted me. Like Taxi Driver, even though it's not a true story, it was reality to
Right.
me, and even Close Encounters, which was I remember Julia and I heard about it at the same time with Stephen out at the beach house when they started talking about it. And she was getting involved, and I remember going back to the office and going into David Beagleman's office and saying, "David, I was just out." She knew Julia, of course. I said, "I was just out at Julia's over the weekend, and there's a project they're talking about with Steven Spielberg." And I said, I wanted to see it, but we've got to go after this. This is going to be an incredible project. So we did. So that was the way things happened, basically, and then we did go after it.
So your documentary,
Right.
I've heard a little bit about it. You are also doing this somehow in collaboration with Gloria Steinem.
Right. Well, Gloria,
Because it's a women's project. So tell us about the project a little bit.
all right. But I also have to tell you about Gloria. Gloria and I became friends not friends so much.
Yeah, because she was not surfacing so far.
Well, no. She and Bob was her editor. Bob, as I said, always had these. First, it was all these sports things, but he was always very, very involved with Washington and politics
Right.
and all this kind of thing.
And she was a big feminist.
And she was a big feminist.
Yeah.
And
still
I
is.
remember, yeah, it still is, absolutely. Totally.
Shout out to Gloria Steinem.
But this was, and Bob introduced me to her.
Okay.
He's the one. And also, when we started all those rap groups in New York, which was in the late 60s, he said, "Oh, you've got to join this." I said, "No, I'm liberated. I don't need liberation. I'm already liberated." No, well, of course, I learned a lot that I wasn't so liberated.
Yeah, we think we are.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
we
yeah.
think we are, exactly. So anyway, I met her through him, basically. And
you always stayed in touch.
well, yeah, we did stay in touch.
And you always see her when you go to New York.
When
right?
I do, yeah.
Maybe you can ask her if she wants to be on the podcast.
Well, that's.
I'll come out to
I'm
New
sure
York.
You're right. Exactly. Anyway.
So
so we
this
were
project-
friends, and then we did a project together. I found this project about. Well, we made it up actually. I don't remember what the idea was, but we just made it up. Yeah, because she started when she would come out here. I'd always say, "All right, we've got to find a project," and I would have meetings. I would take her to meetings, and we would sell things. Anyway, so.
So how is she involved in this project now? Because it's a women's
Yeah, I mean,
project?
I read it.
What's the
on
premise
Monday
of the
morning.
project? How did you find it?
I found it. I read in the New York Times.
Yeah.
On a Monday, I think it was.
Yeah.
This article, a full-page article with a picture of a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Doing, teaching. This calling it Project SOAR. Which
Project
was about
SOAR?
SOAR, SOAR. Which is about getting young girls to stay in school and not to get off and get married or become slaves or whatever.
Slaves?
Well, yeah. I mean,
Wait, where are we
getting
talking
married,
about?
When you're getting married at the age of 13, you're basically a slave.
Wait. Where is this taking place?
In Morocco.
Oh, okay. Because
That was the
slaves
story.
and getting married at 13 would not happen in this country.
Oh, no. We're talking about the Middle East.
Morocco. Okay.
Yes, we're talking about Morocco. And Morocco is already more advanced than a lot of
Other,
of-
yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
exactly. Anyway, so I read this thing, and the next day I called Gloria. I said, "Did you see that thing in the
The article?
She said, "Absolutely." I said,
She
"Don't you-"
did?
Yeah, she said, "Oh yeah, I read it." She said, "You want to do something with it?" I said, "Yes, I'm going to call this woman. Are you in with me?"
Wait,
I'm
what?
gonna-
So the woman is the founder of that
Yes,
organization,
exactly.
Project
And the article
SOAR.
was all about her. The article was all about her and what she's doing there. So I called, literally. I mean,
And
I got
she's
the-
in the States or in
No,
Morocco?
Morocco. She lives in
You
Morocco.
called her in Morocco?
I called her in Morocco.
How did you find out her number?
I'm just trying to think, but I did find her number.
You did.
Yeah,
You found a
yeah,
way. That's
yeah.
the thing, you know.
Well, I don't even know, but it was very easy. I think I just looked it up,
Right.
And the town that she was from, whatever, it was
Yeah.
in the article.
Was she
Yeah.
Moroccan?
No,
Was she?
she is half. I think her father's American and her mother is Iranian.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And how did she end up in Morocco?
Well, she traveled. She traveled a lot with her husband.
Right.
First, she traveled all over, and she was part of a lot of NGOs. Doing. She was an activist anyway.
Okay.
And but this whole story of how she found this place in Morocco was that she was traveling with her husband. They already had 2 kids, and they're schlepping around the world with these 2 kids. And finally, they said, we've got to settle down somewhere. And they fell in love with Morocco, and they fell in love with this town right outside of Morocco, and they fell in love with this little
Well, outside
dilapidated-
of Marrakesh? Or?
outside of America. They fell in love with this little dumpy hotel, whatever it was.
Right.
You wouldn't believe it. It's so gorgeous.
What they
now.
made out of it?
Oh yeah, what they made out.
We have
of
to
it.
go.
No, it's incredible.
Can I work on the movie?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'll
You can
be your
find something
PA.
to do. Anyway, I did the first person I wrote a job to is Lucy, because she was working with the editor on the sizzle reel we did.
So what's the documentary is about the woman and
It's
about the
no,
organization?
it's mainly about the girls. It's mainly about these girls that are taken from the small village, or it's actually there are 13 or 17 places already around Morocco that have this group, where it's an after school activity, and they learn everything about their bodies, their rights, their independence, well, you've seen it. You've seen these girls talking about how
Things
it's
they don't
transformed-
learn at home in
at
their
all, and they
upbringing,
learn the
yeah.
opposite. I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things that always sticks with me is one of the girls saying, "Well, I learned that I could talk to my mother directly. I didn't have to go through my father." Oh no, I'm
Oh, my
sorry.
God.
I could talk to my father directly. I didn't have to go through my mother.
Wow.
That's what it's like. That this is
And then the father comes and it's we find a husband for you.
right.
Goodbye.
Yes,
Yeah.
more or less.
3 camels.
Yeah, right.
Not funny, but yeah.
Anyway,
So they're empowering these girls.
Right,
That's
exactly.
beautiful.
And it is. It really is. And they're astonishing. They're
It's
great.
so amazing what happens in this
Right, and she's expanding in Africa. I think she's gone to Uganda. She's starting in Uganda, I think.
Wow.
Anyway, so it's really about educating young girls about their lives, so they're not
In these parts of the
in the
world
world
where
where-
the culture prevents them
Right,
from
exactly.
knowing from empowering them and
Right,
from
from
knowing their
empowering them,
rights,
exactly, exactly,
as
exactly,
humans,
yeah,
because it's amazing how women suffer in other parts of the world still and are
Well, we went
suppressed.
to one family
Yeah.
where the girls there were 2 girls, 2 sisters, but one of them, she already had a sister who had graduated from Project SOAR and was going to college, and now she was the younger one. And she took us home, and we met her family. Her mother was totally covered, except for the eyes, literally, at home with gloves on and stockings and shoes, everything, black, just totally black. And the father was he had dressed up for the occasion. He had some gown on, some very decorated, very, and he was sitting there with his daughter, and they had a younger son. I think it was a younger brother. Anyway, and he did all the talking, and then finally, the person who was doing the interview asked the mom about how did she feel about such, and she talked. It's the first time we heard her talk. She talked. She was very modest.
Did you have an interpreter or?
Yes. Well, I mean, the people that worked on it were all
Right. fluent, bilingual.
Oh yeah, well, totally bilingual, and all of them. Well, one was from Tunisia. That was one of the cinematographers. The other cinematographer. We had two cinematographers. The other was, and the person who ran the whole show, essentially, the production manager, is. They were both from, not Libya. What was it?
Egypt.
Not Egypt. The one that's just north of Israel.
Jordania.
No, not Jordan. Not Jordan.
Anyway,
No, it's just
Jordan,
No,
Jordania.
it's Beirut.
Oh, Lebanon.
Exactly. Those were
So when you asked that mother, so the question was how if she is okay that her kids are liberated, so to speak.
Right. Yes, I think I can't remember.
She probably wishes she would have been.
No,
in
apparently
her
she's perfectly happy.
that's what she knows.
Yeah, but it turns out that she runs a school underneath for preschool. She has a preschool.
The mother.
The mother. She has a whole school. They live upstairs, and then downstairs is a.
And what did they ask the father too? What his take is on these?
Oh
women
yeah, no,
he's
very excited about his daughters getting educated. And really,
so it's even like by empowering these kids, they're kind of also changing the mindset of the parents
families,
and
course,
opening up their views,
right?
Which is beautiful.
Right.
It always happens when somebody does something; it has a ripple effect on.
Well, in this particular family we went to, there was already an older daughter who was already now in college. She was
and they
college,
also see what they can do and all of that.
Exactly.
You know,
they're very proud. It was extraordinary.
Yeah,
and we want to see more of that. And
even here in LA, I went to a fundraiser for the Healing Community Gardens that they founded, and they do in underserved communities. For example, there's one in Watts, and in East LA, and what they do is they build gardens for and teach the kids how to grow vegetables and stuff, and also like literally from the seed to harvesting.
Right.
And when we talked to the kids were saying that like in their area where they live, they don't get fresh food. Everything is packaged, and they don't have the money to leave their part of town.
Right.
So that's all they know.
Yeah.
So you had to come in and bring it to them. And some of those kids' perspectives have widened so much because one said, I want to become a chef. The other one is like, this is,
exactly.
I know more about nutrition. They're all like, have terrible nutrients. It's all full of sugar, all that packaged and processed food. So it's beautiful. But so, sometimes we don't even have to go as far as India or other parts of the world to help people. We have it right here in front of us as well.
Plenty here that need,
So it was really beautiful to learn about that. But it's always like small grassroots kind of organization, NGOs that do those things. It would be nice to have these programs in a curriculum in school,
Well, I mean, they're cutting out everything that's not,
Yeah, even
music,
the arts.
Art.
Music, I know.
I mean,
my friend from France, she was so shocked. Like, she said, there's no minister of culture in America. I'm like, no. It doesn't exist.
No.
It's like we're used to it. In Germany, we have one, and like all over the place, it's subsidized programs.
But you also know, having lived here, how different life is in different parts of this country.
Yeah. Exactly.
So who's going to be the minister of culture? Is it somebody from New York, California, or is it going to be somebody from Alabama or Georgia? I mean,
but look at Washington, look at Congress. Like it's like there's one from every.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So it has to be like that. It has to be kind of organized like that. Who knows? It's too big of a country. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So all in all, so if this project goes, you're going back to Morocco?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then where is this going to be distributed more, like for television?
Well, that's what we don't know. I mean, my partners in this particular project is the State Department, believe it or not. They're the ones that have financed, they're very interested in it. They give this friend of mine tons of money every year to promote projects that are...
you mean the Middle Eastern related?
Totally Middle East. Well, not
Why
only
would
Middle
they
East.
do that? Why do they do that?
That section, his section is not only Middle East and North Africa. That's his bailiwick.
But so where State Department wants the media kind of department.
They want.
Is it for educational reasons?
Yeah, basically.
For a cultural exchange?
Well, yeah. I mean, he looks at these projects, things that come along and see. I mean, our project is just perfect for them. It turned out that he was in he was in Uganda when Marion was there.
Miriam being the
Marion-
woman from SOAR
right, from SOAR.
project.
And his boss, he was there with his boss, who was somebody in the State Department, and they had both read the article and realized, oh my God, that's this person.
Right.
And she said that she already had a partner, and I remember when she told me that she had met these people that were interested, and I said immediately, listen, if they have money, go with them. Don't worry about me.
Yeah.
'Cause, if they want to produce it, that's
You want to see it made.
I want to see it made,
Yeah.
exactly. She said, oh, no. She said, I told him that I was involved. He knows you.
Oh, that's how you
This
got
is
together.
Jerome.
It's
Yes.
Jerome. Yeah.
Yeah, then suddenly I'm getting a phone call from Jerome.
So now it's more like, since we have all these platforms, is it going to be a series of different episodes?
We don't know yet.
Okay.
We don't know yet. I mean, I think we do want to do
Docu-series or
well, it could be a docu-series.
Right.
It could be, we haven't talked about how many hours even.
So right now you're in the phase of like finalizing the financing.
Right. We were trying to find another partner. That's going to.
Okay, partners here, throw some money at them.
Right. Well,
It's a good
we
project.
We have the well, for example, it's sitting now with Netflix, or it's supposed to be sitting
Yeah.
with Netflix, but it's not.
Does Jerome have connections with Netflix?
Well, no.
Because they don't accept unsolicited stuff.
No,
I heard.
no, they don't. But he has a very, very dear friend who just made a deal with Netflix, and we're trying to go into Netflix with them.
Don't go too far away.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That we're trying to go into Netflix with them,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
yeah.
Cool.
So that's where it's sitting now, but the person who is a big mucky muck, a major woman.
What's
director,
a mucky muck?
a mucky muck, a major mucky muck.
Okay.
Somebody,
I like it.
Yeah. So she, So frankly, this is Wonder Woman is going to be our partner.
No
hopefully.
way.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
The woman. But the problem is
Wait a second. Wonder Woman.
the woman's director, Patty Jenkins of Wonder Woman, is a good friend of his, and we're going to try to
That's
slide it in through the edges.
amazing.
Yeah. So that's why we're waiting. We're being patient because right now
Right.
she just finished the second Wonder Woman, finished shooting it, and is in London doing.
Post-production.
No, she's either music. She's doing a lot of post production.
It's crazy. It's crazy how in the film industry, and I learned that from having so many friends in it, above and below the line. There's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of patience you have to have.
Oh, please. Well, this is one of the
And
things that I
also
hate.
timing, like.
Right.
They want you for this project, but you can't sit around like holding your breath, and then you kind of have to let one go because that would drive me crazy.
Yeah. Well, you do need a lot of patience. I mean, that's what I said. I liked it much better when I was an executive, and it was on my time.
And you have a paycheck.
Not only a paycheck, but that I had a lot of power. I mean, if it didn't get, if I wasn't interested in it, it never went anywhere in Colombia.
But on the other hand, it's also beautiful how we have these platforms now for self-publishing and all of that.
Exactly.
So because there's a lot of creatives who don't have that business sense, so they have like something where
or
they
that
can
connection,
self-release
making
something.
that first connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much content needed, so it gives a lot of people who have that creative, fire, an opportunity to be kind of seen.
Right. Well, I mean, that's true now. I mean, there's no
because I'm sure there's so much undiscovered talent because they don't have an agent or they don't know how to do it, So
well, now everything's being done online. I mean, you publish a book, you can get anything done.
Yeah, a podcast.
Yeah,
look,
podcast.
You can have your own little show.
Yes, exactly.
And you can be uncensored and all of that, which is great.
More or less.
You can curse if you want to.
I'm not inclined at the moment. When it comes up, if it's appropriate, you'll hear it from me.
So all in all, you would say like the path you took, like you really followed your passion.
Absolutely, and I never
all the way.
And I never hesitated.
Yeah.
I mean, it was ever. I see people going, "Oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I?" It's so painful to watch that people don't know what they want or what's good for them.
But not everybody is equipped with kind of
I know that.
toughness that maybe you have. It's always too difficult to understand the other side,
Right.
you know. I mean,
Well, it's not even the other side. I mean, you know, I the other evening.
I try to empower people, or maybe can give them some of my knowledge or tools that
Right.
have helped me grow. You know, I find that is like the best you can do, instead of saying, "Oh, I don't get it. Why does this person?" You know, it's
Well,
more
people
like
second guess
helping.
themselves all the time, and I was never one to
Especially
second.
creative people too.
Yeah.
They say, though, it's funny. There's like these feelings of grandeur, and then of like, I'm nothing, I'm a failure, and so it's kind of something where you have to move in between and go like, okay, just keep moving forward towards your goals.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And you know, you will stumble and you will fall and you will get back up.
Well, look at one of the major things that just obviously changed my whole life was to move out to California. I was perfectly happy in New York. I just turned down a big opportunity because I wasn't going to leave New York, and then suddenly everything starts falling apart, and I just took off. Not that many people would do that either. I
Yes.
just moved to a strange.
It takes courage. It takes
And I think
courage.
I think that Kit in some ways was very important because he had just moved out here. He was
Yeah.
already out here.
There's always
And
key
he-
people that
Right.
kind of have play a part in your
absolutely.
in the
Yeah.
choices you make.
Yeah.
But Kit, you knew from New York, right?
Kit I knew from New York.
So Kit Carson, just to Kit Carson is also kind of a little bit of a legend, right? He's a writer.
Yeah, he's a writer. He
Was a writer. God bless him. Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, he's gone now. But
What
yeah,
did
and
he write? He was like, there were some iconic things that he wrote.
Well,
no?
he
Or
was
produced?
involved in Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was involved with that, and he was involved. Yeah, I mean, he was always. I don't.
So
I don't
he
even know
was
how we made a
your
living.
yeah.
I mean, we were only just friends. We were never.
No. But he was kind of played a big part in your decision making of
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if
relocating.
I would have come out here if he
Yeah.
hadn't been out here. Not that he, you know, and he actually lived with me. I mean, he lived in that house. I remember him in his second bedroom. You know, when that's all there was 2 bedrooms and.
But then again, also in career choices or trajectory, it's also something I find like later in your life when you did the movie with Marco. It's just like you meet a person and you click with them,
right,
and
right.
you have like you're in the same kind of wavelength. And,
Right.
And
they become
creatively
good friends.
and
Right,
yeah,
yeah.
and. Mhm.
I mean, I've always had friendships, odd couple friendships, not couple, but you know, odd friendships. But you know, but you're right about that. I mean, there's always something about Kit that he and I remember being in California at one point, and he was in Texas, and I went to visit him, and I even got on a horse. Oh, please.
When in Texas.
When in Texas, what do you do? Anyway, but I can't remember what year that was or what. But yeah, and also friendships have always been very, very important to me. I mean, much more so than my family in some ways.
Well, they're kind of your chosen family,
Yeah.
your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Because also, you know, we don't have that history sometimes. I always find, like, when I go back to my family, they don't know how you evolved in life,
Right.
like, because they're your inner whatever.
they see what they see.
Development is like they still have that old picture of you from how you were, or
Right,
the
absolutely.
picture they want to paint.
Yeah.
And with friends that you kind of see on a regular basis, is they see that and they are part of your evolution.
Right. Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's why.
As opposed to just,
Yeah.
you know.
And you know, they say if you think you're enlightened, go back and spend a week with your family. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
Anyway,
so that's your project, and what
That's
else
the
are
present
you?
one.
What else are you up to?
Well,
Are you still
enough.
reading a lot?
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
are you
always.
still looking for new projects?
always. I mean, no, I really am not.
Even
I
for
don't wanna go
other
out.
people? I mean, like where
Well-
you would say, "Wow, this would be something for Marco," or this would
Yeah,
be something for Roland.
Essentially, I haven't been doing that. I mean, I look for projects that I'm interested in,
Right.
and you know, if that coalesces with other people, that's great. But I'm not in a mood. You know, you're right. I should be looking for. I was looking for projects with Marco, but Marco would never read anything. So
You
I
know
was
what
very
also
discouraged.
just kind of crossed my mind. Sorry that I'm interrupting,
ahead.
but looking at, you know, your older projects in the 70s, like Taxi Driver, which is really like psychopath, dark, twisted, but it was important to at the time also. You know, it was kind of a reflection of that time and the culture. And now you've moved on, like Trade, for example, is, you know, about human trafficking, which is also you shedding a light on that because it's happening in this country. It's not
Right,
only
and that's what it was
happening
about.
somewhere
Right,
in Asia,
exactly.
which is so great. And now the girls, you know, empowering the girls in Morocco. So your projects kind of have more moved into having a social impact, you know,
Well,
or having
I've always been interested in that, actually.
or in because that's I find that's the beauty about movies and films, because it is where you can tell stories that a broader audience will see that would have never picked up the book or read the article or something and learn about those issues.
Well, I mean, one of the things that was always a disappointment to me because somebody else made it and they didn't do a very good job.
Which one?
Was Folks that I told you about from the convict John. It was his story.
Yeah.
It was his story. Him and his mother.
Yeah.
He was brought up in a whorehouse. I mean, that's his mother's
Okay. Wow,
business.
that's interesting. And so he's written a script about his personal experience.
About his personal experience and getting away from his mother and getting out of that, you know, but still being in that world. You know, you never get away from it.
Hence the bank robbery.
Oh yeah, well
that's all he knew.
Yeah,
right.
He was a professional, and he got arrested. Just curiously enough, when I was about to meet him.
Did he get released from prison, or did he die
eventually?
in prison?
No. Of course he got released.
Okay.
And I helped get him released. I mean, I wrote letters and stuff like this. So he was released early. And I felt the kind of responsibility. He's going to go straight now. I knew that he would go straight. He was not interested in robbing banks anymore. That was just because I got him while he was in prison. I got him $10,000 to write a script.
I know. I remember you told me.
So he had that in the bank when he got out. So you know, and then he started working and selling. So he you know, he didn't make a big living, but he made a living for himself. But I knew that he wasn't going to rob banks anymore. I mean, you know, I didn't. You know, you hear these stories. I mean, of for example, oh God.
But his story about his life is basically like, so he knew that a lot of his behavior later in life and breaking the law and all of this, you know, it's like what we become is what we know, what we knew. So it all comes from your upbringing. So and how can we break away from that? Or do you think he has worked up a lot of it with writing this?
Oh no, he was not. He was not going to go back to robbing banks.
I know, but nobody sends you to a shrink, you know, in 1950 or something and says, you grew up with in a whorehouse with a mother. I think you need therapy. You know, it's not like something. No, it's like carry on. You know,
right.
Like,
well, no, but
figure it out.
He was definitely
damaged.
With
all
of this.
I think we're all kind of wounded and damaged, even if it's like not directly, but you know, everybody says like a doctor, a very kind of intuitive and integrative medicine doctor said once to me, so have you ever lived through any trauma? And I'm like, no. Like I was thinking, you know, trauma to me were big things.
Right, exactly.
And then, but then he kind of questioned me a little bit about my life. And yeah, my parents got divorced when I was 10, and my dad passed away when I was 19. And he's like, and you don't consider that trauma? And I'm like, no. And then that opened my eyes, you know, about like learning about those things that really influence you. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, I've been lucky because I haven't had any of that. I mean, I lost my mother, but that was, you know.
We all lose each other at some point. That's true. That's true. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're very,
coming.
very welcome.
That was awesome.
I
hope you enjoyed.
I did.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. Exactly.
Yay.
Good. Thank you.
That was great. You want to take a photo?